She almost didn't open the door that night. The wind was howling, the snow falling so hard it erased the world beyond her porch. Then came the knock. Heavy. Urgent. When she looked outside, her heart dropped. 9 bikers stood there, their dark silhouettes barely visible through the blizzard. In this town, men like them didn't knock on doors like hers. Not unless something was wrong. Every instinct told her to stay inside. But what happened after she made that choice would follow her for days and reveal a truth she was never supposed to see. Angela Morris had lived in that small town for nearly 15 years. Her house sat at the very end of a quiet road, surrounded by tall trees and long stretches of empty land. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Every morning, she woke before sunrise, brewed her coffee, and watched the sky slowly change colors through the same kitchen window. It was her peace, her safety. She kept to herself, not because she wanted to, but because she had learned to. In this town, she was used to the stares, the long, quiet looks that followed her in grocery store aisles, the subtle silence that fell when she entered certain spaces. No one ever said anything directly. They didn't have to. She felt it in the distance people kept, in the way neighbors never stayed long enough to talk. Still, Angela built her life anyway. She worked hard, paid her bills, helped anyone who needed it. She believed that kindness mattered, even when it wasn't returned. That night, the blizzard came fast. The roads disappeared under thick snow, and the world outside her windows turned white and silent. Most people were already safe inside their homes. Angela was too, until the knock came. At first, she thought she imagined it. No one came this far out. No one ever did. But then it came again. Louder this time. Heavier. And when she looked outside and saw who was standing there, she realized this wasn't just another winter night. Angela's hand hovered over the doorknob, frozen between instinct and fear. Through the frosted glass, she could see them more clearly now. 9 men, heavy jackets, leather vests dusted with snow. Their boots left deep, dark prints across her porch. They didn't move. They didn't speak. They just stood there waiting. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. In this town, Angela knew exactly what men like them represented. She had seen the patches before at gas stations, heard the engines roar past her house in the summer, watched the way people straightened their posture when those bikes rolled into view. They carried a presence that filled space, and not always with comfort. And Angela knew something else. Men like them didn't usually ask her for anything. Another knock came, slower this time, almost deliberate. For a moment, she considered turning off the lights and pretending she wasn't home. No one would blame her. No one would even know. But then she noticed something she hadn't seen before. One of the men was swaying. Another was holding his arm tightly, like he couldn't feel his fingers. Their shoulders trembled under layers that clearly weren't enough for this kind of cold. The blizzard hadn't spared anyone. Out here, miles from the nearest town, the storm didn't care who you were. And in that moment, Angela faced a choice she knew carried risk either way. Slowly, carefully, she unlocked the door. The wind immediately forced its way inside, carrying sharp needles of snow with it. The men looked at her, not speaking, not moving. Their eyes scanned her face, then her home, then back to her again. She could feel it, that familiar weight, the silent judgment she'd lived with for years. She almost closed the door again. But instead, she stepped back. Not an invitation, just space. For a second, no one moved. The storm howled behind them, pushing harder, louder. Finally, the tallest one stepped forward, cautiously, like he wasn't sure he was welcome. The others followed, one by one, bringing the cold with them. Snow melted onto her wooden floor. No one said thank you. No one said anything at all. They stood in her living room, dripping water, filling the space with their presence. Angela suddenly became aware of how small her home felt, how alone she was. She watched their eyes move across her walls, her photos, her life, and then she noticed something else. One of them was staring directly at her, not with gratitude, not with relief, but with something else, something colder than the storm outside. And that was the moment Angela realized letting them in might have been the beginning of something she couldn't control. Minutes passed, but it felt like hours. Angela stood near the edge of her kitchen, her arms folded tightly across her chest, watching them. None of the men spoke to her. They spoke to each other in low voices, glancing in her direction like she wasn't even there. Like she wasn't the only reason they were alive and warm in that moment. Then she heard it, a quiet chuckle. She turned toward the sound and saw one of the men looking at a photo on her wall. One of the men was looking at a photo on her wall. It was a simple picture. Angela, standing proudly in front of her home the day she bought it. Her smile was wide, her eyes full of hope. He leaned closer to it, his expression unreadable. Then he shook his head slowly. Another man stepped beside him. He looked at the photo, then at Angela, then back at the photo again. One of them muttered something under his breath. Angela couldn't hear the words, but she didn't need to. She had heard that tone before. That quiet disbelief. That unspoken question of how someone like her could have something like this. Her stomach tightened. She suddenly felt exposed, vulnerable in her own home. The tallest man finally turned toward her. His eyes moved across her face, not with warmth, not with gratitude, but with something colder, something distant. For a moment, neither of them moved. Angela's mind raced. She had opened her door when no one else would have. She had chosen compassion over fear. And yet, standing there now, she didn't feel like a savior. She felt like she had crossed an invisible line. The storm roared outside, rattling the windows violently. Inside, the silence was worse. Then, without warning, the tallest man began walking toward her. Slow, heavy steps against the wooden floor. Angela's breath caught. She couldn't move, couldn't speak. All she could do was stand there, bracing herself for whatever came next, unsure if her kindness had just put her in more danger than the storm ever could. The man stopped just a few feet in front of her. For a moment, he said nothing. His eyes moved around her home again. The walls, the furniture, the life she had built piece by piece. Angela braced herself, her body tense, her heart refusing to slow down. Then, without warning, he reached into his jacket. Angela's breath caught. Her mind raced through every possibility, every headline she had ever read, every story that ended with someone who looked like her being reminded exactly where society believed she belonged. But instead of harm, he pulled out something small. A folded glove. He looked at it for a second, then quietly placed it on the table beside her. It was soaked through, worn, useless now. One by one, the others began to move. No words, no smiles, no gratitude spoken aloud. They simply walked toward the door. And then they were gone. Their engines roared to life moments later, disappearing into the storm, leaving behind nothing but melting snow and silence. Angela stood there for a long time after they left, staring at the empty doorway. They had needed her, trusted her warmth, relied on her humanity to survive. But even in their most vulnerable moment, they never truly saw her. Not as an equal, not as someone deserving of dignity, just as a place, a moment, a convenience. And that was the part that stayed with her. Because racism isn't always loud. It doesn't always shout or strike. Sometimes, it lingers in the silence, in what isn't said, in what isn't acknowledged. She had opened her door without hesitation. The real question is, will they have done the same for her? And how many doors remain closed today, not because of the storm outside, but because of the prejudice within?